Great, thank you very much. Thank you all for letting me be there, if only virtually. My name is Thomas Howe. I am a communications developer. I've only done that in my whole career, which is really sort of sad. What I'm here to talk to you about today is a project which I've started, a year and a half, 2 years ago, to build what I'm calling a bot server. And this is a presentation about what we've been working on together as a group, and I hope you enjoy it. Adam told me that my voice is my mic is muted. So if you have a question, make sure you tell Adam you want to ask me a question, because you'll have to unmute it before you ask the question. Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I am working on my forward echo cancellation, so I can, modulate my voice to make sure there's no echo back to me, because it'll be my issue. Um, so, um, so let me just start with a little bit of a worldview to make sure that we're all on the same page. I view bots as the third leg of the customer communications stool, and by customer communications, I mean real-time communications, and I mean communications with the business. I think bots are the closest thing we'll ever have to native communications with machines and software. I believe that bots come in when when you're in the none of the above category. I think people will come to your company's website when they are on their desktop. Mobile apps handle it when you've installed the app and you want to interact with the business. But if you don't do those two things, I think the none of the above option will be bots. And this is a slide I'm going to just go over very quickly, but I included it here for the people who want to read it later. Generally, if you look at this matrix between sites, apps, and bots, in terms of implementation and design choices, what you'll see is that bots are surprisingly efficient in terms of connecting people and businesses. That's not only in terms of money, but in the time that's required. And kind of hilariously, the best thing about bots is that there's no pixels involved. If you do any sort of analysis around development cycles and cost, you'll realize that a significant amount of cost that comes into that life cycle happens when pixels are involved. So I'll leave that there for your future reference. So what bots are to me are things that connect people and programs. And this is, I think, a very transformative idea for businesses. Generally, when you want to connect yourself into a program or a business, you're forced to, again, go on the website or install an app. Or for the purposes of our field, communications engineering, you're forced to call people, and generally calling people and calling businesses, as we all understand, is an expensive process. It's extraordinarily inefficient and hardly pleasant. Bots are the things that help us solve that problem. So as I said before, my job as a communications developer, I was on the team that developed the first DSL modems back in the 90s. In addition, I was one of the first engineers at a company called PictureTel that did the first voice over IP implementations that actually ended up being voice over IP. But in the last 10, 15 years, I've been working a lot in the web world. And in the web world, we talk a lot about the web stack. This is what I'm calling the lower web stack. In fact, I think lower web stack is a town in New Jersey. It's somewhere between Hackensack and Camden. And I say lower web stack because often when people say web stack, they are talking about the next layer up. What I'm talking about is the lower layer of what makes the internet go. And these four items here are the things that get put together to generate existing applications. So the OS would be something like Linux, database, what those are, etc. And this was not the actual initial architecture of web and web applications. and really came to maturity sometime in the mid 2000s when late 2000s when the API economy started up, and we understood that making data-driven websites was important. I would posit and I suggest that we don't have a standardized bot stack, and what we really would want to do is to start as a community understanding how we write bots and what the relative positions are of the elements in that stack. And so just going over what I would imagine a bot stack to be, and again, the idea here is to build a data-driven bot, that the lower layer of a bot stack is the messaging network itself. And by messaging network, I mean things like WhatsApp and Line and Matrix and SMS and Facebook and Skype and everything else that generates messages. The database layer is the same as it always is. And then I'm positing on top of that a bot server, which has the fundamental position to connect bots to networks, integrating it with data and allowing it to scale. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But the bot server is not the bot. It's the thing which bots use as a container, just as if you were a website. Thus, when you write bots in the context of a bot server, there's a bunch of stuff you get for free, just like as if you had put your HTML on a web server. So when you compare these two different stacks, the lower web stack on the left and the bot stack on the right, I've given some examples here of what the relative examples would be. And what we're talking about here in this presentation is the bot server on the middle right here, and we're calling it Greenbot. So let me just talk just a bit about the problems that exist in messaging that bot servers help you fix. And the first one is text doesn't ring. For a lot of us in this room, we've spent a lot of time with WebRTC and the like. And one of the beautiful things about telephones and video conferencing and et cetera is that they have a session. But unlike telephones, messaging has no sessions. There's no start and an end to a messaging session that's natural to the network itself. They're atomic. They don't have relationships between them. However, sessions are fundamental to real-time business communications. Sessions are the idea that runs call centers. Sessions are the idea that can run post-call surveys. Sessions are really important. So one of the most important things a bot server does is it provides a start and an end to conversations. That way you know when it was over. That way you know when it started. Next, I'd like to talk about another problem that bot servers help us solve, which is I call it the 1,000 messaging networks problem. And there really are 1,000 messaging networks. If you get into this at all for any amount of time, you may focus in on Facebook, you may focus in on Twitter, you may focus in on Slack. But what you have to understand is that from a practical perspective, SMS worldwide is a problem of 6,000 phone companies with 6,000 messaging networks, all with their own independent methods of billing and authentication and connection. Writing a bot for multiple networks is silly. Imagine you had to write one bot for Line, one bot for Skype, one bot for blank. It's a silly idea. And what's even more silly is writing a bot knowing that the next messaging network that comes down the line will require you to port it to that one when it comes time, and they're coming all the time. So a very important thing about bot servers is they integrate to many messaging networks, so you don't have to. As you write your bot, you can care a lot less about what your underlying messaging connections are because the bot server is handling that feature for you. Well, there's a part two of this problem, which is the other direction. So again, if you're just paying any sort of attention, you have to recognize that there are thousands of bots written every single day. And that's really and truly, it's an amazing amount of effort being put into them, and I understand why. But imagine your position as being a member, as running a messaging network. There are thousands of them. How is it that you're supposed to encourage these people who are writing thousands of bots to write them to your network Well, again, it's actually the same answer. Because bot servers integrate to many messaging networks, you don't have to pick which bots you support. You don't have to worry about being able to write Watson bots to your network, even if you have a little network, because all you would need to do is support your network, and Watson's going to do its thing. And there's a part 3. And so there are thousands of messaging networks, but in reality, your business actually connects to 3 or 4. And it connects to your Facebook page, your Twitter account, the messaging side of your phone number. And then you have this unification problem that we've been dealing with for quite a while. And so the last thing a bot server does in this category of solution is to integrate to many messaging networks so your customers can address them appropriately. You can have a unified front of bots. A couple more things that bot servers help you do. In a new market, when things are immature, it's difficult to understand how you actually generate a bot that can scale up to a certain value, especially when you don't know the network below it. So what a bot server does is it provides you an architecture that's invariant to scale. That as you generate your bot and put it in the bot server, without regard to the scale you run your bot at, you have an invariance to your infrastructure. And that helps the junior programmers make less mistakes. Also, what's interesting about bots is there's no standard way of sharing them, storing them, and providing ways of getting them around to other developers. They may be standard bots. We'll talk about that in a second. But what a bot server does is it provides a standard container, a standard way of integrating the data it generates to other data services, a standard way of configuring bots, and a standard way of installing them. So a bot server solves that fundamental problem. So basically, in general, this is what a bot server does. It manages sessions, it connects to networks, it scales. It also does a couple other things I didn't get into here, but I think are very interesting, like connects to many people. If you're interested in human language translation, as it goes to bots, the bot server is essentially the right place for that sort of feature to live in a way which doesn't have to be integrated into every bot. So I've been talking about Greenbot. We've been working on it for a couple of years, and it's now open source. I encourage you to go get it. It's on github.com/green-bot. It is relatively mature. It works. There's admin stuff. There's lots of basic bots that we've written for examples. And in your next bot project, I would encourage you to go get a bot server. And if you don't have a favorite one yet, let me suggest it should be Greenbot. I think this is something that we need to get in front of as communications engineers, people who make it our jobs to connect people together in real time. And this should be one of our fundamental tools of writing bots. And if it's not going to be Greenbot, that's fine too. I still encourage you to check out Greenbot, so it give you some ideas so you can make your own bot server and make it better. It's the way open source works. It's the way software ought to work. So just one more quick thing before I let you go. So when we built Greenbot, one of the things that we did was we made a series of example bots just to make sure it worked, right? And one of them is called KISST, and KISST stands for Keep It Simple, Stupid Texting. And basically, it's a set of bots which are standardized that you can just take off the shelf and use. And so the idea was we don't need any applications to install, no geeks, no hassle. You can pick a conversation from the ones installed on the server, change the settings, run it and collect the data, and it works for all the networks that get attached to. The way these simple bots work is pretty simple. Someone texts a keyword into the bot server that maps it to a bot. The bot has an automated conversation with the consumer, with a customer. That bot might be based on Bash, just a simple script. We've also been able to support Watson, so you can have natural language bots. We're currently porting over things like QBot and BotKit. When the conversation's over, the results of the conversation are emailed. Again, the bot server does that for you automatically, and it webhooks the data into any other system you'd like. And we have a series of standard bots that sort of manage the basics of customer communications, like collecting leads or reporting potholes or shooters, or taking a survey from a person, or even something as stupid as an under construction bot. Like, I haven't have anything done yet, but we're getting there soon, right? So what I'm working on next, and I'm having a call out here, if anyone's up for working on another open source bot with me, I'm interested in having some friends help me, for a scheduling bot. It's a very, very standardized sort of a business process that we require in most businesses. I want to schedule an appointment. I want to schedule a fleet. So this is a bot that we don't have to write a million times over. I'm interested in writing that bot for Greenbot so that everyone can use it. So if you're interested in helping me out with that, let me know. My Twitter handle is Howe Thomas, and thank you so much for your time.